For years, Scottie Scheffler looked like the safest man in professional golf. Not loud, not theatrical, not built for controversy. He was the champion who showed up, won, answered questions politely, and went home. A world number one without the performance of ego. A superstar who made dominance feel almost ordinary. That made him valuable. To fans, he was easy to trust. To sponsors, he was clean. To the PGA Tour, he was something even rarer. He was proof that the old system could still create the perfect champion. Then came the reported signature. According to reports, Scheffler signed something the PGA Tour did not fully understand until the story had already started moving outside its control. Not a standard Nike deal, not a simple media project, and, according to the same reporting, not a live golf contract. Something quieter. A structure. A commercial vehicle. A way to control value that the tour had always assumed belonged inside its own walls. One signature did not prove a war had started, but it raised the question the sport had avoided for years. What happens when the most important player in golf no longer needs the system as much as the system needs him? That is why this story feels bigger than a contract. Golf has seen money before. It has seen Saudi investment, equipment deals, appearance fees, private equity, broadcast pressure, and players threatening to leave when the price became high enough. But Scheffler was not supposed to be that player. He was not Greg Norman in 1994, quietly imagining a rival structure before the PGA Tour knew how serious the threat was. He was not Phil Mickelson in 2022, already standing inside a storm of comments, money, LIV golf, and damaged trust. And he was not Tiger Woods in 2000, walking into Augusta and telling the world he was rebuilding his swing at the peak of his power. Tiger's decision changed the way people thought about greatness. If the reporting around Scheffler is accurate, this changes something colder. It changes the way people think about ownership. Who owns the value of a champion? The player who creates it? The tour that packages it? The sponsors who buy access to it? Or the media system that turns it into a product? For most of modern golf, the answer seemed obvious. The PGA Tour built the stage, the players performed on it, the tour sold the field, the drama, the broadcast, the history, and the names. The model worked because no single active player could easily stand outside it. Scheffler may be the first modern case where that assumption becomes fragile. The public saw a steady champion. Behind the image, according to reports, a different calculation may have been taking shape. The reported arrangement was not prepared overnight. Sources described a process lasting roughly 14 months. If true, that detail matters. 14 months is not emotion. It is not a reaction. It is planning. It means lawyers reading language, sponsors being separated into categories, media rights being examined, future conflicts being anticipated before the public saw anything unusual. During that same period, Scheffler continued to look like the tour's ideal star. He won. He spoke carefully. He appeared at sponsor events. He sat in rooms where players were told about new structures, signature events, elevated fields, stronger purses, and better products. On the surface, nothing looked broken. That may be the most important part. The quietest people can sometimes see the system most clearly. The reported structure is what makes this different from a normal defection story. LIV golf is the easy headline. LIV is familiar. LIV gives people a simple villain, a simple map, and a simple explanation. This is not that. According to the version described in the reporting, Scheffler's move centers on a separate commercial entity, a platform around his name, image, appearances, sponsor relationships, and media access. Not necessarily a break from the PGA Tour. Not yet. Something more complicated. A player staying inside the system while building beside it. That is harder to fight. A rival league can be attacked. A defection can be punished. But a private commercial structure around the best player in the world creates a different problem. It forces the tour to ask where its authority ends and where the player's independent value begins. For decades, that line did not matter much. Now it does. Scheffler's value is not only competitive, it is commercial. He does not just win tournaments. He changes the importance of the field he enters. Sponsors care when his name is attached. Broadcasters care when he is near the lead. Fans care because he represents a certain kind of dominance. Calm, precise, repeatable, almost machine-like. That image sells. The question is who gets to sell it. The PGA Tour's player agreement reportedly gives the tour broad rights to use a player's name and likeness around tour events, broadcasts, promotion, and commercial activity. That kind of language makes sense in an older market. The tour builds the stage. The player performs. The tour packages the performance. But what if a player's personal market grows larger than the old agreement expected? What if sponsors want him, regardless of the tour's package? What if a media project around him reaches audiences a normal broadcast does not? What if his data, consistency, public image, and dominance become a business separate from the schedule? And the old contract does not disappear. It starts to strain. That is where the real conflict sits. Not in a press release, not in a dramatic interview, in language most fans will never read. According to the reporting, tour lawyers began reviewing the issue after learning about the structure. One point of tension is said to be a clause dealing with commercial vehicles that may compete with or duplicate the tour's own commercial activity. That clause was likely designed for a different kind of threat. A rival operation, a competing product, a player trying to build something that looked like a tour. But Scheffler's reported position is harder to categorize. If a player becomes commercially self-sufficient, is that competition? Or is it simply the natural result of being too valuable for the old framework? Scheffler's side may read the language one way. The tour may read it another. Between those two readings is a fight neither side may want to make public too early. Because once the document becomes public, negotiation turns into precedent. And precedent is dangerous. If Scheffler can do this, other elite players will study it. Not because all of them have his leverage. Most do not. But because one player can reveal a path the rest of the field did not know existed. That is why Rory McIlroy's role matters. For years, Rory has been the face of reform from inside the PGA Tour. During the LIV conflict and the chaos that followed, he spent public credibility defending the idea that the institution could still fix itself. He argued for process, for structure, for collective strength, for changing the tour without burning it down. There is a serious argument in his favor. The tour cannot become a private kingdom for its biggest names. Golf still needs fields, depth, rules, sponsors, rankings, and tournaments that mean something beyond one player's brand. If every star builds only for himself, the collective product weakens. That is the other side, and it cannot be dismissed. But Scheffler's reported move exposes the weakness in that argument. If years of player pressure move slowly, and one private structure forces emergency legal attention, players learn something. They learn that the system listens differently when leverage is written into a contract. That does not make Scheffler right. It makes the old process look slow. The pattern has been building for years. Greg Norman saw that the tour's control could be challenged before the tour wanted to admit it. LIV proved that player loyalty had a price, and that outside capital could turn frustration into movement. Phil Mickelson became the warning of what happens when private resentment, public comments, and rival money collide. Now, Scheffler represents a different version of the same pressure. Not rebellion from the outside, expansion from within. A player does not have to shout to become a threat. He does not have to insult the tour. He does not have to hold a press conference and declare war. He can simply build a structure the old agreement was not ready to handle. That is why the US Open timing matters in the Scripps version of events. Pinehurst becomes more than a major championship. It becomes a deadline. Before the first tee shot, the PGA Tour has to understand what Scheffler is inside its own system. A member, a partner, an Esel, or something the agreement never expected to name. Those words sound legal. They are really about money. They decide who controls access, who can package the image, who benefits from sponsor demand, who gets paid for media attention, who owns the commercial force created by winning more than everyone else. The tour's position would be simple enough. Scheffler became this valuable on PGA Tour stages. His wins, ranking, reputation, and visibility came through its events. No player becomes a global golf business alone. That argument is not wrong, but it is incomplete, because Scheffler's value is also his own. The tour did not create his ball striking. It did not create his discipline. It did not create the calm that sponsors want to stand beside. It did not create the feeling that when he enters a field, the tournament becomes heavier. The tour built the room. Scheffler became the person everyone looked at inside it. Now both sides may want credit for the same value. That is the fight, not a moral verdict, a business collision. And the most dangerous part for the PGA Tour is that Scheffler's image makes him difficult to attack. A loud rebel can be framed as selfish. A controversial star can be turned into a warning. But a quiet champion with a clean public profile creates no easy villain. He does not look like a man trying to damage the sport. He looks like a man asking why the sport gets to control so much of what he created. That question will not disappear, even if this specific conflict is settled quietly. The next generation is watching. They are watching how sponsors follow individuals. They are watching how athletes become media platforms. They are watching how data turns performance into measurable commercial value. They are watching how old contracts handle new money. And they are watching whether the PGA Tour bends before it breaks. Maybe the reported structure becomes nothing more than a negotiated adjustment. Maybe Scheffler stays, keeps winning, and the public never sees the documents that made lawyers nervous. Maybe the tour clarifies its agreement and everyone moves on. That is possible. But if the reporting is accurate, something already changed. The most stable man in golf forced the sport to ask the question it had avoided since LIV first exposed the weakness of loyalty. What is the PGA Tour really selling? The tournament? The field? The institution? Or the players powerful enough to make all of it matter? At the beginning, this looked like a story about one signature. Now it looks like a test of the entire commercial structure around professional golf. Maybe Scheffler never wanted a war. Maybe he only wanted control. But sometimes control is the first thing an institution hears as a threat. The number was never the whole story. The deal was never only about money. And if the quietest champion in golf has already outgrown the framework built to contain him, the warning is not that he might leave. The warning is colder than that. He may not have to.